8 people were injured Saturday night near the Western Wall when a terrorist opened fire at a bus sitting at the station. Earlier in the week, an off-duty EMT who witnessed a deadly traffic accident used unorthodox means to save the life of one of the victims. Former IDF Chief of Staff is now joining politics for the upcoming elections, and the New York Times cuts ties with a freelance journalist over anti-Semitic posts. I'm Josiah, and this is the Israel Guys. Welcome to the Israel Guys, where we believe that in a world of Jew hatred and anti-Israel propaganda, you should have a direct connection to the land and people of Israel. Guys, welcome back to the show. First off, make sure you like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode of the Israel Guys. We're coming to you 3 times a week. Again, bringing you the cutting-edge, latest news from the land of Israel, the true news and authentic headlines straight from the land of Israel. Guys, I don't like to report on stuff like this, but unfortunately, we've had another terrorist attack in the land of Israel just this weekend. It's always really hard to, when we have these things happen, and they seem to be happening more frequently, hard to report on it, but we need to tell you what's happening because most of the media is not going to be reporting on this. They're not going to be talking about these Jews that were attacked inside of the Old City. So Saturday night, actually, near the Western Wall at a bus station, a terrorist opened fire and injured 8 people. This is a bus station near the King David's tomb in the Old City, in between King David's tomb and the Old City. Terrorist opened fire in the direction of a bus, injuring 8 people, 2 of whom are now in serious condition. So appreciate prayers for those. Actually, strangely enough, 4 of the members of the attack were actually members of a family. They were all from New York, curiously enough, and the father was seriously wounded. He was shot in the neck. The mother, I believe, was in moderate condition, and his son and daughter were also wounded as well. The Glick family, they all were U.S. citizens, were here visiting in Israel, and they were a part of this terrorist attack. Another one of the wounded was a pregnant woman, actually in her 30s, who was shot in the stomach and is in serious condition now. Also, her baby, serious condition. Thank God she underwent an emergency surgery at the Shaare Tzedek Medical Center inside of Jerusalem. And the baby's actually delivered via emergency C-section. Thank God the baby is reported to be stable, but still in serious condition. So I really appreciate your prayers for these victims who are still suffering and are in serious condition. I believe 2 of the other victims were actually brothers who were standing there at the bus stop. They were both shot in the shoulder. One of them actually, I think, turned around and started helping other people. Thank God, it seemed to be lightly wounded. But still appreciate prayers for the recovery of all who are involved. Guys, this cannot be happening. Terrorists who are attacking Jews inside of the Old City, it's horrendous. This is terrible, and this is very sobering, and definitely don't like to report on stuff like this when this happens. Definitely very, very sad. And unfortunately, it's the state of the people, the Jewish people, the Israelis, and the nation of Israel is up against. People who are calling for death and destruction against the Jewish state and the people of Israel. The alleged shooter, so the terrorist actually turned himself in after almost an all-night manhunt Saturday night, turned himself in early Sunday morning, and right now it doesn't seem to be clear whether he's part of a terrorist organization or a terrorist-affiliated group, but he does have a criminal background. And although we don't know exactly if he's affiliated with a terrorist group, several Palestinian terrorist groups, including Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad, have welcomed the shooting attack and described it actually as a, quote, heroic operation. A man going in and shooting indiscriminately at innocent Jewish civilians inside of the Old City is, in their book, a heroic operation. And these groups also called on Palestinians to carry out more attacks against Israel. This is horrendous. This is terrible that we have these terrorist organizations. I mean, you expect it out of a terrorist organization, but still, these are the guys that the world is making excuses for, and they're constantly blaming Israel as well. The U.S. Embassy spokesperson, the U.S. Embassy inside Jerusalem, the spokesperson put out a statement confirming that U.S. citizens were among the victims, the 4 members of the Glick family that I mentioned earlier. They put out a statement saying, we are, quote, "We are shocked and saddened by the terrorist attack outside the Old City of Jerusalem. We strongly condemn all acts of terrorism and actions that exacerbate tensions. Our thoughts are with the loved ones of the victims, and we wish all of them a quick and full recovery." We can say amen to that. Israeli Prime Minister Yair Lapid also made a statement Sunday morning when he opened his cabinet. He said 8 people were wounded in last night's shooting attack in Jerusalem, 2 of them seriously. The security forces were at the scene within minutes and were engaged and pursued all night in cooperation with the significant ISA, Israel's National Counterterrorism Unit, and police forces. Yair Lapid said, "There is one conclusion from this incident as from previous incidents. Whoever harms Israeli citizens has nowhere to hide. We will pursue them, find them wherever they are, and deal with them to the full extent of the law." And that's amazing. Absolutely correct. Deal with these terrorists and pursue them and deal with them to the full extent of the law. Terrorism is not okay, will not be tolerated in the land of Israel. And it's very encouraging to see a strong statement coming from the Prime Minister of Israel on things like this. Guys, I heard a story, crazy story happened last week. Deadly accident, and a off-duty EMT actually used very unorthodox means to save the life of a young Jewish woman who was involved in this attack. But first, I got to tell you about our brand new Biblical Heartland tumblers. We just released them last week. They're on our online store. These 20-ounce stainless steel tumblers, they're actually laser engraved with an incredible design. Shows you the outline of the land of Israel, Biblical Heartland written underneath. It's got the Israeli flag inside. And it shows that you support the Biblical Heartland of Israel. Unfortunately, in today's world, there are many leaders and enemies of Israel who are calling for the creation of a Palestinian state, which would ultimately be a terror state inside of the biblical heartland of Israel. They call it the West Bank. It's actually Judea and Samaria, where most of the Bible was written or took place inside of this area, the West Bank. They call it Judea and Samaria. We like to call it the biblical heartland of Israel. So if you go and buy one of these tumblers on our store, show that you are supporting the biblical heartland of Israel. Go ahead and give it a try. We love it. Keeps your hot drinks hot for 10 hours, your cold drinks cold for up to 18 hours, I think. And we're pretty sure it'll probably be your favorite tumbler, your go-to tumbler for road trips or maybe just your everyday use. Plus, if you use the promo code Heartland, you can get 15% off for just the next 48 hours. So go ahead and use that code. Check them out. Link is in the description below, or you can click up here to check out our brand new Biblical Heartland tumblers. Use promo code Heartland for 15% off just in the next 48 hours. So don't miss it. Check it out. Link is in the description below. Guys, last week, a Hatzalah, United Hatzalah, is a volunteer EMT medical service here in Israel. They respond. We've talked about it multiple times on the show before, but they respond within minutes, sometimes within seconds, to terror attacks. They're all over Israel, and I believe there's units operating in different places around the world as well. But an off-duty EMT actually witnessed a deadly bus crash in Jerusalem, where I think 2 victims were actually killed in this crash. But according to Arut Sheva, Shalom Klein, the United Hatzalah EMT, was standing at the bus stop on Shamgar Street Thursday night with his wife and 7-month-old daughter, baby. A naked bus careened out of control, slammed straight into the bus stop where he and his wife were actually standing. Miraculously, they were not injured. They were not hurt at all. Shalom quickly took his family to safety across the street on the other side and then rushed back to help the injured, because he is an EMT. He's trained to go back and help those who are hurt, and he didn't have any of his equipment with him. He ran back across the street, saw a mother and daughter lying on the ground. Unfortunately, those were the ones who had died immediately. They were beyond his help. Then he found a young woman with severe injuries to both of her legs. He took off his tzitzit. Now, his tzitzit are the tassels that Orthodox Jewish men wear on the 4 corners of their garments, as it talks about in Leviticus, I believe, in the Bible. He took off his tzitzit, so his long strings here, and he used it as a tourniquet around one of her legs and actually saved her life. Amazingly, another volunteer EMT from United Hatzalah arrived very soon after and was able to put another tourniquet on her other leg. But incredible innovation. These guys are taught to use whatever they have on hand, EMTs, and crazy. I don't know if I would have thought of that, to grab something like that and just use it, stick it on the wound. But Shalom reflected on the incident afterwards and was very thankful that he was there at the right time, and he was able to use what he had to save this young woman's life. He said, quote, "I've never thought my tzitzit would save someone's life, but they did on Thursday. I'm glad that my family is safe. It was an absolute miracle that we weren't hurt ourselves." Yeah, these guys were standing right at the bus stop. This is crazy. The bus careened into people gathered at the bus stop, and it hit people right and left. I believe I was spared so that I could save this young woman's life. I was in the right place at the right time to help. I used what I had on me, and I improvised just like we are taught in training. Today, that lesson saved a life. And we can thank God that, yes, this young woman's life was saved, and for the quick thinking of Shalom Klein. So shout outs to Shalom for his efforts and his amazing ability in saving this young woman's life. Amazing stories like that always give me, inspire me that to help, and that maybe you could be used to save somebody's life someday. So hope you're encouraged by that story happening right in Jerusalem just this last week. Now, the former, here's a little update on what's going on in the government with all the different parties leading up to November 1st elections here in Israel. The former chief of staff, Gadi Eizenkot, who actually, this is the guy who replaced, so Benny Gantz is the head of the Blue and White Party. Benny Gantz was the former chief of staff. He stepped down in 2015, and Gadi Eizenkot replaced him in 2015 and served as the IDF Chief of Staff until 2019. So now it seems he's entering politics, and he's joining the Gantz and Saar's state camp slate. So Blue and White and the New Hope Party, Gidon Saar, Benny Gantz's party, they joined together. They're running together in next election on November 1st. And now the former IDF Chief of Staff is joining their party as the number 3 seat. So we have Gantz is going to be number 1, Gidon Saar is going to be number 2, and then Gadi Eizenkot is number 3. So we've seen a lot of go back and forth on some of the different politicians or MKs from last government and the different parties. They've been moving around. This is kind of the time when the different parties are trying to figure out how they're going to run for the next, what's the best strategy to get the most number of seats, and maybe forming coalitions with other parties, that kind of thing. So also the former Yamina MK, Matan Kahana, who was the guy who basically was responsible for bringing the last government down. Ultimately, he was the last straw, which brought it down and made it so the coalition that is in now not be able to pass anything in the Knesset again. Matan Kahana has also said he's going to join Blue and White and Saar's slate for the next upcoming elections. He's supposed to get the 9th spot on the list. I believe that the Gadi Eizenkot was also promised, from the reports I heard, that he would get the defense ministry if Gantz was elected prime minister. So that's really all I saw that was happening in the government this week as far as coming up for next elections with the different parties. Yamina also teamed up with another party here in Israel. They're now going to run on a party called the Zionist Spirit Party. So they're hoping to garner more seats with that as well going into the next elections. Now, the New York Times actually fired a freelance journalist, or cut ties with a freelance journalist that was publishing through the New York Times over his anti-Semitic post. Now, this sounds like a good thing, and it is, that the New York Times actually cut ties and stopped publishing with this guy, but actually they didn't stop until after an NGO called Honest Reporting brought to light a string of severely, blatantly anti-Semitic social media posts and promoting terrorism. Some of these guys' posts this guy's posts were actually promoting terrorism and the killing of Israelis and Jews. Now, the Honest Reporting is an NGO that monitors the media for bias against Israel. If you've never heard of Honest Reporting or checked out their stuff, I encourage you to go check it out. Go to their website, Honest Reporting, and they're constantly on the lookout for media bias against the state of Israel, against anything that happens in Israel. And they do a very good job of calling out different organizations for their extreme lies or media bias against Israel. Now, the Honest Reporting published a list of posts by this guy, Fadi Hanona. He's actually a Gaza-based journalist who started publishing with the New York Times, especially during the last round of fighting in Gaza. So the Honest Reporting published a list of posts from this guy, this Gaza-based journalist. He was a contributor to at least 6 articles published by the New York Times during the last round of fighting between Gaza and the Islamic Jihad between Israel and the Islamic Jihad inside of Gaza. Now, he also shared a propaganda video. It's now been deleted from Facebook, but he shared this propaganda video on Facebook of terrorist groups in Jenin, and these guys were calling on Palestinians to return to a, quote, culture of fighting and killing Israelis. This is terrible stuff, extreme hate speech and violent stuff that this journalist who was publishing with the New York Times was publishing online, I guess Facebook, or maybe he deleted it after it was exposed and brought to light. But Hanona also wrote on those posts, I don't accept a Jew, Israeli or Zionist, or anyone else who speaks Hebrew. I'm with killing them wherever they are, children, elderly people, and soldiers. Jews are the son of dogs. I'm in favor of killing them and burning them like Hitler. I will be so happy. Like, this is horrible stuff that this guy is writing and he's promoting. And the New York Times was just publishing with him. They were just, he was contributing to their articles about the latest round of fighting in Gaza. This is crazy. The New York Times did say that they had worked with this freelance journalist only in recent weeks, and they are no longer doing so now. But unfortunately, this guy has a history with reporting and posting anti-Semitic posts and tweets. He did it back in the 2014 war with Gaza as well. Lots of stuff like that. So I can't really believe that the New York Times wasn't warned. They didn't know who this guy was before they started working with him to publish in their newspaper. Crazy stuff. Thankfully, New York Times has cut ties with him, no longer reporting with him. But still, guys, this is what we're facing in the media. Bias against Israel, extreme bias, and anti-Semitic, hate-filled terrorism against the state of Israel. That's why we're bringing you the truth here from the Israel Guys. Guys, let us know what you think in the comments below. We love to interact with you there, and we love hearing your thoughts about what's going on. And if you have any questions, also put those down in the comments below. In the meantime, tune out the fake news and tune into what is actually happening in the land of Israel. Remember, we'll be back every Wednesday, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday with your direct connection to the land and people of Israel.